on.
All right. And I'm going to
Do we do the clappy thing?
Billy says we don't need to, but you told me you were going to do it anyways. That was perfect.
I know. I feel like I'm
you're
not
like my
doing it right if I don't do the clappy
That was
thing.
like my kismet sister. We clapped at exactly the same time.
I know.
It was like a
felt like I was
jinx.
doing like a salsa dance.
That was weird. I can't wait to watch that back on YouTube. That's actually kind of fun. Little things. How are you this week, Lucy Bryden?
I am good, thank you. Was that Maggie?
Yes.
Oh,
because our kids are coming home from school.
Apart from the snow in April.
How much snow did you get?
I saw a really funny meme somewhere that was like, Scotland, what kind of weather do you have today? And then Scotland, it says all the weather.
Oh.
Because that's true.
Yeah.
It can be super hot and sunny and not super hot. Not like your kind of hot.
Yeah.
Our kind of hot. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
70.
12 degrees centigrade. Whatever that is in your temperature. But super hot in the morning, sun's out, and then we get hailstones, and then we get rain, and then we get gale force wind, and then the sun comes out again. And then it snowed heaps last night, and there was like snow everywhere.
Oh, how much did you get?
It was gone again by morning, so it wasn't like Ohio snow.
Yeah. No, I grew up in New England, and my birthday was just last week, and I remember quite a few birthdays where there was a blizzard, or there was snow, or there was at least snow on the ground. Growing up, for sure, is definitely common, and I don't miss it. As much as I hate the summers in North Carolina, the whole rest of the year is amazing.
Yeah,
like amazing. April's like a gift.
I have to say, I do love a little bit of snow. I love that.
I don't mind it.
That cozy feeling where you're warm in your house. And you look outside and everything's super quiet because it's snowing, and the world goes silent, and it's and just got that
snuggled up with your wee dram and your book by the fire. Yeah. I know.
But not in April. Come on. Come on, weatherman. Get your act together.
I have to say, it is absolutely freaking beautiful outside. It is pollen season. And when I say pollen season, I mean like it snows yellow pollen. Like the cars are covered yellow every single day. Like you have to use your windshield wipers to see out of the car because there's that. It really, truly is that thick. It's thick where you can, so our deck was painted it's a covered deck. Was painted last week. 4 days later, you could take a dustpan and brush and sweep the the pollen. Like that's how heavy it is. It's absolutely disgusting.
I think I might die in that.
Yeah, a lot of people
bad allergies.
A lot of people do die in it. I don't have any allergies, so it doesn't bother me. But yeah, crazy town. So that's the downside. But it's like gorgeous if you don't count that snowing of pollen. And I'm wearing my new t-shirt. If you can see me on YouTube, this amazing Clan Campbell t-shirt rocking. Which says wreaking havoc since the Middle Ages was given to me by my Scottish bestie. Lucy, seriously, I was screeching like a freak when I opened this. It was so special. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Actually, you have another gift coming, but I haven't actually posted it yet.
That's so kind.
It's sitting in a box in my house, like just because I have been too lazy to go up to the post office. So you will get it soon.
Well, this was magical when it showed up. I literally was screeching like a crazy person. It was so fun.
It was very fitting because you do wreak havoc. So
yeah, I do. Yeah, and my husband was so jealous, which was so cute. It was super cute.
No, I should have got you matching ones.
Can I just tell you one thing? Since we both are book hoarders, we both love our books. So have you have you come across Catherine Briggs references like in your research for the past few podcasts? Have you noticed her name?
I have heard that name.
So she
the one that did all the fairy research?
Yes, she is, and I think she was president. I'm gonna like just make things up right now, but I think she was the president of like the folklore society in Britain for like 15 years. She was a big wig in this. Yes, she's an eminent folklorist and former president of the Folklore Society. So she lived from 1898 to 1980. But if you look at like any fairy Wikipedia post or anything involving mythology, Celtic mythology, Scottish mythology, fairy folklore, you'll see the name Catherine Briggs coming up. So you can find a bunch of her books on Amazon, and they're like this one must still be in print because this came in 2 days. It was very affordable, but her like Bible is called the Encyclopedia of Fairies, I believe. And I went to go find it. Of course, I went to Amazon. I was like, I keep seeing this book. So I have this one. I'm holding it up, but if you're listening to the podcast,
what's that one called?
You don't know what I'm holding. Sorry. It's Briggs. It's called The Fairies in Tradition and Literature.
Ooh,
but she's sorted and cited in every main research. And so I went on Amazon, and that her encyclopedia, which is like the Bible, it's like 460 pages. It's massive. Wow. And it's been out of print since the 70s. There was one left, and it was like $140. And I actually almost bought it for full price because I was like, it's my birthday. Like that's going to be my birthday present to myself because I keep seeing it come up over and over and over again. And then finally I was reading, and it was like, if you don't have any other books, like this is the one you have to have. And I was like, well, I have every other book, so how could I not have this one? But then I didn't realize I had all these credit card points like saved up, so many, and I didn't pay a lick of attention to that like forever and ever. I never used them ever, and I had all these points, so I ended up getting it. I only ended up paying like $26 for it.
Bonus.
Thank God. But I almost just whipped out the 140 because I was like, I need it so bad.
So have you got it yet?
No, I just ordered it yesterday. I couldn't believe it. That was like a present that I found, this random stash of coins.
I listened to a super interesting podcast. Maybe even a year ago or sometime like that. And it was about another woman who's written a dictionary or Encyclopedia of Fairies, and it was on a fairy and folklore, I think, or
I have another one.
I'll have to look at,
it
was on a folklore podcast. I can't remember exactly which one, and it was super interesting. They were interviewing her, and she referenced Catherine Briggs a lot. Like she was her inspiration. And
you can't like avoid her. She was just such a huge contributor. She compiled like more stories. She must have gone out and just interviewed a million people. And it is a little bit highbrow. It's just, it does read a bit like a textbook, some of her things, but it's just also like she lists them in a very objective way. So it makes everything sound so just real and factual. Like it just kind of lays it out there. She's very like objective about the stories and so I feel like I'm getting a dishload of facts, although in reality I have no idea of anything.
Is it the kind of thing that you can dip into so you can just look things up in the index or just go into certain chapters, or Absolutely. Do you need to read from start to finish?
No. This one this is divided up into this one. The Fairies in Tradition and Literature is part 1 is the fairy peoples. Part 2 is Traffic with the Fairies, and part 3 is some literary fairies. So she divides them up into like categories in this particular book. So the categories are like historic survey, the fairy realms, tutelary spirits, forgotten gods and nature spirits, the host of the dead, hobgoblins and imps, giants, hags and monsters, fairy beasts, fairy plants, regional differences, etc. So it's great. So they had a section. So I know you're doing changelings. So it has a chapter on changelings and midwives.
Oh,
so
I
you
wish
can like,
I'd had that book when I was doing my research.
I know. Fairy wives
Although
and fairy
it probably
lovers.
would have just confused me even more after I found the millions and millions and millions of bits of information that I found.
I know. I can't wait to hear about it. You know, the last time I heard about changelings was, oh crap, I don't know the name of the show. There's like a new show that came out. And the main character of the show, and it's like current day. It's like, you know, they do like a making fairies cool, where it's like posh. It happens in like today's age kind of thing. Oh God, I'll have to ask Sean what the name of the show was. They go to like a cool fairy high school, which is like in a castle. What show is that?
I watched that. It was a little bit teenagey.
Oh, it was very like CW. What is the show that I would have seen at CW?
What CW?
It's like the teenager channel on cable if you're like in the States. Okay. It's like all the cool teenager shows are on that channel.
It was definitely a bit teenagey, but I watched it just because it was magic and fairies.
That's why we watched it. Yeah. And she's a changeling.
And you could tell that the person that wrote it was quite possibly heavily inspired by Harry Potter as well, because the whole thing of like, you know, the whole thing of this kid that didn't fit in and hadn't known that she was a fairy, and then someone came and told her that she was actually magical and she could attend this secret school.
I know.
Which was a little bit Harry Potter.
You think? I know. It was cute though. We still watched it.
I enjoyed it. I can't remember what it was called, but I enjoyed it.
But she was a changeling. That was the whole thing. She was shocked to learn.
And there was a changeling in Outlander as well. Do you remember?
I actually am not remembering, and then I feel really bad
season
about that.
1, and it's the whole start.
Oh yes, I
Claire
do.
Getting accused of being a witch because she
hears the baby crying.
Child.
Yes.
And then someone, I think Galis tells on her, comes and tells her she can't do it because if anyone sees her, they're gonna accuse her of meddling in the change.
Yes, I do. Now that you talk about that, yes, it's so cool. And I'm trying to remember the first time I think I heard about changelings. It might have been on my 2017 trip. I think it was the driver or the tour guide of our tour, who was amazing historian, and I remember she was the first one, I think, to tell me about that. If we could
get her on as a guest.
I'm Facebook friends with her. I remember her name.
See if she wants to come on as a guest and do like her.
She was amazing.
For us. That would be so cool.
I know. You know what I actually did? I asked her about the Glencoe massacre, because we were driving through Glencoe, and my husband's family is Campbell, and he was like, I'm pretty sure we massacred like a whole other clan way back when, and now everybody hates the Campbells. And now everybody hates us. And I was like, what? So I was like, I asked her if she could tell the story to it. And so it was super magical, because we're on this, big tour van, and I was sitting alone with no one next to me, and I had my camera running and taking footage out the window, and I captured the whole story as she told it.
Oh, beautiful. And it's so amazing there.
It's amazing. And she had a microphone, so you can actually hear her, and the footage isn't the best, but having the whole story told by a historian in a beautiful accent, like looking at the Glencoe scenery, it was really, really special. Yeah. So I came home, and I need to find it. I should actually like put it on our blog. Maybe when I'm sure I will cover that, or you'll cover that at some point.
I'm sure that one of us is going to talk about that at some point, for sure.
Yes. And so anyways, I don't remember what I was talking about. Oh, she was the one that told me about changelings. Yes. Yeah. Super cool. Do you wanna?
Shall we dive in?
Yeah, I really want to learn. I only know of fairies.
Am I going today?
I went last time, so you're up, sister.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Well, I tell you what, I found so much stuff, and the more I Googled, the more I found. In fact, after I had written all my notes, which are a little bit of a jumble because I found so much and there was just so much. So it's probably going to, what I was getting, the image in my head that I was getting was, do you remember when you're in college and you have an exam to study for and you read and you read and you read and you write? I used to write out because that was my only way. Like there was some way of connecting it into my brain.
Look at my notes. I still do that today.
Was reading and writing and reading and writing, and I would go to bed the night before the exam, and I'd feel a little bit like the opposite of Sherlock Holmes. So like Sherlock Holmes has super that dumb. Like super super dumb. So Sherlock Holmes has that like super organized mind palace thing in his head where it's like this mind map and it's all connected and he can just go in and find this one little bit of information and he knows where they all connect to each other because he's super clever. And I feel like my head
empty black hole.
It's like an empty black hole of all these jumbled up bits of information.
Well, you're not alone, girlfriend. You're not alone.
And they will get spewed out, and then probably in 2 weeks' time, when I listen back to what we've done, if I can bring myself to listen to it, I'll go, shit, I forgot about this and I forgot about this and I forgot about this.
I know. It's all good. I won't know though, so I won't know.
But what I am going to say is that after I did all my research and I was kind of researched out by this point, I then found a website that's published by the University of Pittsburgh. So if anyone wants to go and find it, if you type in Changeling stories, it comes up in Google, University of Pittsburgh, and it's like a PDF type document or whatever, and there are pages and pages and pages and pages and pages of Changeling stories.
Really?
From mostly not just Scottish, there's obviously some Irish ones, and because there's the changeling folklore, I'm just going to talk mostly about kind of Scottish or generic, but obviously there are stories about changelings from Northern Europe, from all the Scandinavian countries, from Ireland, from England, from Spain, Italy, all. And apparently one website or one podcast that I listened to said that there were even some Native American stories that were similar as well. So it's a little bit like how we talked about the other week.
Goblins were like everywhere. Yeah. Remember I was talking about that? It was like Mexico and like South America. What?
Those fairies are tricksy. They are tricksy, and they are nothing like the little adorable fairies that
Tinkerbell.
Yeah, that people think.
I just said Twinkerbell, but I meant Tinker.
that people have like they've made out of fairies. Disney, or maybe I shouldn't mention the word Disney. Cartoons have made these cute little fairies.
Yeah,
and
I know they do it in America
to some extent.
Well, I was shocked to find out, Lucy, and it might have been you who was telling me about that, because we dove right into like our lore discussion way back when we first met in 2017, and I was shocked to learn. I genuinely had no idea that there was like a sinister side to fairies. I mean, because in the States, 100%. Fairies are like little girls. They're associated with like princesses and sparkly lights and jewels and Disney and rated G movies. And like, that's it. That's all the fairy education you get. And when I was started to learn about real quote unquote fairies, it just became about infinitely more interesting. The fact that they're mostly real actual kind of mean bastards and really tricksy and this dark sides. And I also have all these rules and superstitions and things that you can and cannot do around. And it was like this whole world of like,
what? And not only that, there are so many different kinds of them.
Oh my gosh.
So there's a fairy that does this, and there's a fairy that does that, and there's this kind of, there's so many different species of fairies.
And that's why I keep having to buy books, because there's like
obsessed.
no,
you tell we're obsessed. We are just obsessed.
There's no end. I mean, there's like hundreds of names. I mean, even when we get to talking about what I'm doing next week, it's the same thing. There's like subspecies, and every town will have its own version of something, and then they have a name for that. It's crazy.
And then the fairies in Scotland are different from the fairies a little bit from the fairies in Ireland or the fairies in Wales or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And actually they think, I'm going a little bit sidetracked here. I knew I was going to sidetrack, but anyway, they think that there's theories on where fairies, obviously originally they would have been a pagan thing. So originally they probably thought that they were just a whole other species of people that lived in this other world that was like almost like in parallel to our world, but you couldn't see it, and there were different ways of entering. So that's where all these fairy hills and fairy mounds come from, because there's these certain places where the veil is thinner and there's an entrance.
Portals.
But then there's also theories of whether fairies were fallen angels or demons. And I think, without getting too intellectual and without analysing too much, that possibly that is a Christian thing, is that they kind of turned fairies into this demonic type entity rather than a magical or another creature
of humans, right?
Because then it was easier to explain. Maybe I'm just theorizing, conjecturing myself.
That's okay. That's the whole, that for me, that's half the fun of learning about them, is it really gets my brain going. I mean, the whole time I'm reading these books, I'm like, is this for real? There's hundreds of accounts and sightings. You don't have hundreds of accounts of seeing, religious figures or whatever, but you have hundreds of accounts of.
Because of Karen's face, for those people that are watching on YouTube, because I can see that she's trying to be very diplomatic.
I don't want to make anyone mad at me, but it's just, there's books and books and books and sightings, and people spend their whole lives talking with people who can talk down. I mean, these are like real sightings of things. I know. And they're not coincidental.
I've had my own weird fairy encounter, which I'm going to reserve. Possibly out with our, how about our first ever listener episode? I'll tell my fairy stories.
Oh, that's a great idea.
You have to write in with a listener story, so that we've got enough listener stories. You can find it on our website.
And a shout out to Nikki Webb, because she has emailed us a whole bunch of stuff that I haven't even had a chance to look at. So Nikki, if you're listening, please accept our apologies, but we are on it, sister. And actually, Lucy, I didn't even tell you this. She commented on one of my YouTube videos, and I was like, will you be a guest? Because she has so much to say and to offer. And so I just, so you know, I invited a guest.
We should get her.
I was like,
on,
for sure.
And Nikki will definitely be telling your cool stories in our listener stories.
You are all about it, and I want to honor you. Just, you showed up for us. I would like to show up back for you, Nikki. Girl. So we would love to have you. I want to hear stories directly from people if they have something cool to share.
Oh, me too. I can't wait. So come on, get them in.
Okay.
That was me being bossy.
Is that what that was? I want to hear about changelings.
So I'm thinking that maybe before I get too far, I should just say that like I said, fairies are tricksy, and this story this whole thing gets a little bit like not gruesome, but not particularly pleasant. And it talks about a little bit of child abuse. So maybe I should have this not for under 13s disclaimer.
Maybe triggering for some.
Yeah.
Listen with caution.
Yeah, just I bet that most of our podcast is probably not really a for kids podcast.
No, we only have 2 listeners anyway, so the 2 of you that are listening right now, just listen with care. If you need to excuse yourself, don't listen
with your 5-year-old children.
Yeah, don't be a bad parent like me.
Yeah. So at the crux of it, changelings were basically not always, but mostly a baby that was replaced by a fairy baby. So the fairies would steal the human baby and replace it with one of their own babies in its place and take the human baby to fairyland. But it's not just babies. So I will talk about that in a little bit, but it was mostly babies. And how would you have known that your child was suddenly switched? So it tended to happen when the child was quite young. Mm-hmm. And actually, I'm going to say now because it fits in better, but it could also have been young mothers or pregnant women or mothers that had just given birth. Mm. And then very, very occasionally men, but mostly either women or babies. And it was actually mostly male babies rather than female babies.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, I know.
Is there any reason why? Did they say?
Yeah, I'll come to it.
Okay.
You'll just have to wait.
Ooh.
So, sorry, excuse my sniffing. It's like allergy season here too, despite the snow. It's like every weather, like pollen and snow. So
you're totally excused.
I know. So you could really tell that, so people would tell that their baby had suddenly changed. So they would start off life with this perfectly happy, healthy, gurgling in its cot baby. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, the baby would change. And that is how most people would come to realize that their baby was a changeling.
Oh.
Because the baby could start to look sickly. It would have this huge appetite and it would want to feed all the time, but it would actually not really get nourished by constant eating. It would still lose weight and not be not thrive. That's the right word. It might have some strange characteristics. Huh. So it might not look quite baby-like anymore. Like it might have teeth or have hair on it. So it might have a bit of a beard or hair on its body, like that fine downy hair that babies sometimes actually do get.
They totally do.
There's actually a lot of changelings that can be explained away if you want to debunk it, I guess.
Yeah.
But
so it's mostly behavioral changes and not like physical changes?
Well, no, because the physical changes would be that it would suddenly look a bit different. Okay. It would maybe be as the baby grew older, it would start to look a little bit different from I guess what they would say a regular human being would be. So it would maybe have it would be taller or have a larger head, or its limbs would be not quite in proportion with the rest of its body, or it could have a bit of a humpback, or loads of different things like that.
Literally terrifying.
Basically anything that
Abnormal.
wasn't considered
Quote unquote
normal.
normal.
So you might see where I'm going with this, but we'll get to it later on, because we do want to talk about the whole changeling myth first. So the other thing is that the baby could be a little bit more intelligent than a normal baby. So these changeling babies would normally be noticed to be changed between maybe 2 and 6 months old, but this changeling baby could talk or say things, or
wow,
suddenly, or it would laugh uncontrollably, or it would be interested in things that it shouldn't be interested in. It might have unusual behavior. It might jump around or be acting silly.
So basically, it's any baby that doesn't normally act like your baby.
A baby that doesn't normally act like your baby.
That is terrifying.
So they also might have different hair color or different eye color.
Is it because it was someone else's baby?
Because it was a fairy baby. So the whole idea of why babies were switched, there's actually a few different reasons. So they think that either the human baby was so beautiful that the fairies wanted it. So quite often it was beautiful. If your baby was super beautiful, you had to be extra careful that your baby wasn't stolen by the fairies, because that's when the fairies would want it. But on the other hand, they think that sometimes babies were switched because the fairies were being evil and they wanted to be evil.
Jeez.
So you can't really tell. Those,
right.
Like I said, those fairies are super, super tricksy. Or the fairies needed to give their baby to the humans because apparently the fairy babies were sometimes sickening, not thriving, and
so they
needed
wanted to
human milk in order to feed them, so that they could grow.
Is it true, just based on your research for this one, or maybe just your general fairy knowledge? I feel like there's a lot of things having to do with milk. There's a lot of like milk offerings, and maybe that's just because it was like the life blood of people, you know, centuries ago, and it was just that's how you nourish your baby, probably solely for years, but longer than they would now, right? Like that's really like your lifeblood more. So maybe milk just in general is, you know, they don't have formula, they didn't have baby food, you probably just had your mother's milk for longer. And then, so I wonder if it has a larger role in just in terms of fairy lore, like coming up so much. I'm totally conjecturing here, but I feel like the offering of milk is super common when it comes to the brownies and all the baby things. It isn't crazy, but I just was wondering if you came across that sort of.
Well, definitely when I was doing research for this, offering of milk was also a one way of trying to switch your baby back. So that is definitely include not just milk, but you know, other food as well. But I think are there not things to do with milk and witches as well? Is that witches turning milk sour? Isn't it? Isn't it the witches turn the milk sour?
I haven't really done a lot of witch research yet, outside of the stuff that I've done for the U.S. witches, which I haven't.
I think that there are stories of witches turning the milk sour, and that is one reason why they get caught out. But I would need to do a bit more research as well.
Okay. Well, we can talk about that when we do a witchy episode. So
you're more likely to get to fall prey to a whole changeling switcheroo if you live near to somewhere that's a little bit magical. So somewhere that's like a forest or a fairy hill or an old abandoned building or caves or bridges, anywhere where the fairies themselves might live, because then they can swoop in and out really quickly and do that whole switching thing. Whereas I guess if you lived in the middle of Glasgow city centre, you would be less likely, because you would be surrounded by other houses and you're less likely to have fairies living amongst your midst. Ask these fairy changeling babies. So some fairy changeling babies.
Can you guys shut the door, please? I'm trying to record a podcast. I muted myself, so you just talk. It's fine. No one can hear me.
I just heard Karen shouting at her kids.
My kids are just talking right outside. I'm like, dudes, guys, can you shut the door?
So some fairy changeling babies actually stay with their human families forever, and some don't. Some decide to leave and go back to their fairy families, regardless of whether they've actually been switched back or not. So the ones that decide to stay will grow up with that same problem. They'll have difficulty fitting in. They won't feel like they belong, and they are just those little bit don't quite fit in with the normal human. And so there's actually quite a lot of talk about how this whole idea of changelings is linked to children that nowadays would be diagnosed with certain kinds of illnesses. Mm-hmm. So things like jaundice was where your skin changed color, and if you had extreme jaundice, then you would
die. All three of my kids have jaundice. Yeah,
you would arch your back and you would scream and wail, and you'd be the kind of baby that was sickly and couldn't settle and wouldn't be happy and would be grouchy. All the things that they claim that changeling babies were. And other things like autism, where your behavior is maybe just a little bit different from other people within society, that they now think that autistic people are possibly the same as changeling.
Yeah, that's so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So I know, and that's where I feel like probably none of those stories, or maybe the people during that time honestly believed that they must be changelings, like that was their way of coming to terms with their baby not being 100%.
They totally 100% believed it.
Yeah.
In fact, up until the late 1800s, early 1900s, it was still used as a defense in court for killing your child sometimes. Wow. And there's actually a famous story. It's from Ireland, not from Scotland, but I'll just touch on it anyway. Apparently, I probably have listened to this, but so long ago that I can't remember. Apparently there's a lore podcast episode all about this, and it's about a woman called Bridget Cleary who was murdered by her husband and 9 other people in the family in the late 1800s because they had decided that she was a changeling, that she had been switched by the fairies, and that she had to be killed. So I am going to talk about the methods of tricking the fairies into giving your children back in a bit, and a lot of that is similar in Bridget Cleary's story.
Wow.
So they actually burned her, which is fire is one way of trying to get the fairy to kind of almost jump away. And
what? That's horrific. Oh, that's
And the
awful.
husband and the family claimed in the trial that they fully believed that she was a fairy changeling. And and that was in the 1800s in Ireland. So people did believe it. There's another story of another famous story of a woman who drowned her child and said that she was just trying to get the fairy out of him, and actually used that in her court defense.
And what happened with both of those cases? Were they excused?
I can't remember about the drowning one.
What?
But
you can't leave us hanging like that. All right.
I can't even remember her name, actually. I listened to so many podcasts and read so many articles today.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's just all like going around my head like this.
Oh, right. And Sherlock Holmes.
I know. I wish I was a little bit more like Sherlock. But so the husband of Bridget Cleary, he got 20 years in prison.
Oh, wow. Good.
And he then, when he got out of prison, because they were only in their 20s when it happened, so he was still a fairly young man when he got out of prison, he then emigrated, I think, to Canada. But all of the other members of his family, that he'd also convinced that she was a fairy, and that to help him in this whole thing. A lot of them only got maybe 6 months or a year. You know, they didn't get a huge sentence.
Wow, that's so
and
sad.
Apparently, whenever I read this or heard this, I can't remember, that apparently most of the other people in the area at the time, apart from possibly the judge, also believed his story. So
that's awful. Oh, it's so sad.
And so they think that I'm actually jumping ahead because I was going to talk about this at the end, but it doesn't matter. They think that don't laugh at me.
I'm laughing with love. Don't worry.
They think that in a way this was the old way of trying to deal with children who had a sickness or some sort of developmental disability.
Sure.
And blaming it on fairies instead, and then killing your child or leaving your child outside and letting it die was
like you weren't killing your child at that point. You were not killing your child.
You're killing someone else's child.
Right.
Exactly.
Oh, that's just so awful.
But they also say that there's that side to it where it's this way of getting rid of a difficult child, but also that the times that people lived in, food was so scarce, it was such a hard life. If you had a child that needed 24-hour care and extra food, and you didn't have any money, that was a constant drain on an already difficult
and that's assuming you survived the birth of that child to begin with. I mean,
I know.
Plus, they're all seeing fairies in real life anyways, so
yeah.
So
totally.
I mean, their whole world is peppered with superstitions and just their imaginations and
it's totally the way of explaining why something is not the way that they can understand that it should be.
I don't think we can even remotely understand exactly what these people, how they perceive the world and what something like that would.
Well, but also the thing is that who's to say that in 500 years from now, there won't be somebody sitting on Mars doing their podcast, but it won't be called a podcast because it'll be 500 years from now. They'll be telepathically beaming into their listeners' brains, and they'll be saying, do you know that those people in 2021 thought that? could you believe that they actually thought that this was this and this was that? So it's the same kind of thing.
It really is. I know. I know. And that's why you can't, it's like as much as I want to be like, that is horrific, I can't believe that was happening. At the same time, I have to like stop and be like, no, you have no idea what these people's worlds were. And that's why I'm obsessed with this podcast, is because I'm finding just how interesting their worlds really were by these stories and these sightings and their belief system. I mean, it's crazy interesting, and it's bigger and more colorful and complicated than you would ever even imagine. That's what's so interesting about it to me. So I mean, and I get on the other side, I can totally understand how it would honestly be like a relief, not a relief, but you would never harm your own child.
So this was a way
so they weren't they were removed from that pain of doing it.
Responsibility of it.
Completely. But they, especially because they genuinely did not think that was their baby. Not that they were excited about
many different disabilities and illnesses. I'm not going to list them all, but there are so many of them that it's thought could be linked to this whole changeling phenomena. But really? Not just that, but also the adults, because there's the whole thing of women being taken away.
Oh, that's right. Because I forgot that it was not just babies.
It's not just babies.
Oh gosh.
So with women,
right,
it was newly married women or new mothers, and in fact, when a woman was pregnant, they would quite often hide her pregnancy. And then after she'd given birth, there was that whole laying in thing where she had to stay in the house and she couldn't leave. And I think that is partly to do with this whole safety of not being available to be taken away. It's thought that the fairies wanted to exchange women because they wanted to take a newly married or pregnant woman so that she could look after their babies in fairyland and nurse their babies. So she was desirable. When a woman was switched, so when a baby was switched, it was for a fairy baby. Although saying that, sometimes this weird, ugly fairy baby that acted weird and could talk was like that because it was actually like a 90-year-old fairy that was pretending to be a baby.
Oh, that's a big pill to swallow.
So it wasn't even just fairy babies.
Yeah.
It was sometimes old age fairies that wanted to go into the world of humans,
like
so that they could
reincarnate almost
like
have a new life
somewhere nice and comfy to live out their old age. We were the fairies' retirement home, basically.
Oh, that's so weird.
I know. Can you imagine having a baby and then suddenly you become a retirement home for a 95-year-old fairy that's all wizened and ugly and wrinkled and goes, I don't like these barracks that you've made.
But then it just makes you think, what then has they really been switched with then? Like what?
What do you mean?
I meant like who really is there then? Like if the change
because the fairies can enchant you so that you don't see that, you see a baby.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
So you see a baby that looks like your baby, but it doesn't because it looks a little bit different. So it's like a glitch in the matrix. It's like you look at your baby, but then all of a sudden you squint your eyes or something and you see that it's not quite right. And then if you squint your eyes, you see this.
See,
suddenly your baby's got wrinkles and grey hair. And you're like, what?
This is like Finbo Gahim. It's like a normal story is this far, and then the Scottish folklore story goes all the way. And there's twists and turns, and there's offshoots, and it's always
still snowing in April. We've got to do something. It's so freaking cold. We can't go outside. So we've got to sit by the fire.
So much whiskey. And then they're like, wait, my baby kind of looked like a man right there. Or maybe they were.
Just you wait, Karen. Just you wait.
Wait till what?
So if you're a woman that was switched, they don't
God.
switch you for another woman. No.
What?
They switch you for a log.
What?
A log?
A log?
A log.
Not okay.
A log that is enchanted to look like your wife. So you think it's still your wife.
That is a good looking log. That is all I have to say. It's a hot log.
So your wife is in fairyland, but you've got a log that is enchanted to look like your wife. And you'll only find out because she just starts to wither and die. And then if you buried her and then dug it up afterwards, you would find that inside the coffin was just a log.
What in the heck? What? See, the story just took another turn. As it always does.
Also stories of changeling women being absolute grumpy ass bitches that are like so nasty, and they're nasty to their children. And so
yeah, that's because they're pissed because somebody switched their life around. They're like, you go here.
But this is the fairy. This is the fairy pretending to be the woman.
That's true.
But the thing is that the podcast, so I was listening to this really cool podcast today too. One was called Bigfoot for Breakfast, which was a really cool
I like
podcast.
That name. Yeah, that is cool.
A good one. I'm going to listen to them some
I
more.
discovered a lot of good podcasts this week myself.
And the other one that I listened to was called History and Folklore Podcast. So I think it was in the Bigfoot for Breakfast one. They were talking a lot about the correlation between the changeling myths and actual modern day problems. And what they were saying, which I hadn't put two and two together before, was that the whole bitchy woman thing was actually to do with postnatal depression. And because it's in that time frame of the first year after a baby's born. And so they think postnatal depression, which is why these changeling women would be really horrible. They would act really irrationally. They would sometimes murder the children, because that has happened in real life. So I hadn't actually thought about that. I hadn't put that together before I listened to that podcast. So that was super interesting.
That's real. And I mean, I knew you were doing changelings, but I didn't at all have an understanding of how frightening and complex that would be.
I know.
I have that stupid things like that dumb TV show in my head without, just those like 1 second stories that you hear. Like the first time I heard about what they were like, oh, fairy baby switched with the human baby. But when you actually stop and think about all of these things.
So there's all these rules as well.
Yeah.
Like just before I get on to that podcast also mentioned that sometimes men are taken away by the fairies. Right. But what I thought was super funny, like props to them, it was hilarious, was they were saying that in most instances, the men don't get switched by something else. They just disappear. So they get taken away by the fairies.
Yeah, they did.
So it's like that's like the 16th century version of the man going off down to the pub because his wife's at home with the 3 bairns, and the bairns are crying and he's sick of it, and he just doesn't bother coming back. And so what they were doing was they were explaining why their husbands ran away and abandoned them and were shitty fathers and shitty husbands.
Oh, that's so sad.
By saying that they'd been stolen by the fairies. which I think is that they don't deserve that excuse, quite frankly.
Well, but maybe if you look on the bright side, maybe some of these wives like killed their useless husbands, and then they were like, I don't know. Maybe they knew how bad they were, and so maybe they like slipped a little oleander, and then they were like buried him in the backyard, and they were like
a little bit of laudanum.
That's what I was thinking. Like it could go both ways too, I'm sure.
Murder was a lot easier to get away with in those days. There was no DNA.
Lucky bastards. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh
no.
Sorry, excuse me, YouTube. I have to wipe my nose. It's disgusting.
I've already screamed at my children, and then I forgot that YouTube will absolutely be listening to that.
There are certain things that you could do before we finish. I'm going to talk about this super quick. There are certain things that you can do. I thought this was hilarious, to either ward off the fairies or reveal them. So the whole idea is that when you discover that your child is a changeling, you have to get it to reveal itself, and only then will you get that switch back where you get your own child back. So in order to keep the fairies away, one solution is to get your child baptized. I'm sure this was the Christian church's way of controlling those heathen Scots that believed in fairies.
You think?
Get rid of fairies by taking us to church. We have the perfect solution. Take your children to church and get them baptized, and that'll keep the fairies away. That just sounds like the perfect propaganda.
Oh, they were desperate. They were desperate.
They were desperate.
Yes.
So the other things that you could do were to constantly watch over your child. Do not leave your child alone for a minute. So they're all the stories of this child, maybe the mother just going out to hang out the washing and leaving the child under a tree in its cot in the garden, turning her back for 1 second, and then going back and picking up their child, and then a few days later being like, this isn't my child. He doesn't act like him.
Oh, it's so creepy.
You could leave different kinds of herbs and things around. So you could hang some hawthorn on the door. You might sew mugwort into the clothes of the child. You could, I've got written down inverted coat, and I don't know what that means. So
inverted coat, maybe putting the coat inside out and then
putting the coat inside out, but that just sounds super stupid to me, and I don't quite get what that is all about. The only thing I could think of is either I wrote it down wrong because I was like going a little bit doolally by this point. Either I wrote it down wrong, or it is that whole thing of tricking the fairies into you are not what I'm looking for, because you want. So if a child was really beautiful and blonde, because fairies loved blonde children, they would maybe put a hat on, or they didn't have hair dye or wigs, so they couldn't do that, but try and trick the fairies into thinking that their child wasn't as desirable as it was, so that their child wouldn't get picked.
Got it.
So the other thing is to put some iron, because your fairy research, that iron is the thing
strong repellent. Yes,
it's a strong repellent against witches and fairies and all of that kind of genre of beings,
except for the red caps who wore iron shoes. But
the
one exception. Yeah.
So if you put some scissors in the cot, it sounds super dangerous, but open, so you might ward off the fairies, but in the meantime, you might actually stab your baby's legs. but it's thought that it had a double. It's thought
just
it had
thinking about how now, like nowadays, they're like, there should be nothing in the baby's crib. Like they're like, you can't even have like a bumper, no stuffed animals, like you can't dress your baby, like no blankets, like. And I'm just imagining
blankets.
Oh, it's like all. At least I don't know. It's changed. My youngest is 12, but when I was having babies, you weren't supposed to put anything in the child's crib because like everything was a suffocation risk.
But you live in a hot place. You couldn't do that here. It's too bloody freezing.
Yeah, it's a good, but now they make all these like zip-in pajamas and like everything is like
my son had one of those. He was so cute.
You can't have. Oh, they're so cute.
He'll hate me for saying that.
Little nuggets.
I am not allowed to mention him in this podcast
and the
at
onesies.
all.
Too late. I know. So,
but we're gonna move on because
I was just laughing though because I'm thinking about our like pristine crib. It's literally like crib baby, and then I think of they have like open scissors, and those old timey scissors are like enormous, and they're just gaping and like pillows,
herbs. Coat that's sewn on the wrong way. Herbs sewn into the coat.
They're hot poking into the poor baby who's already hanging out with scissors. So I know. Oh, hi Maggie.
But hello Maggie.
She's hungry for her dinner.
But they think that the scissors open made the sign of the cross, so it was a way of being religious as well.
So they definitely had to keep them open. So
putting a Bible as well, putting a Bible in around the child. So not only do they have scissors in their cot, but they also have a Bible.
There's a lot happening in this little bed. Well. Oh, that's so funny.
If you found out that you had a changeling child, there were certain things that you could do to try to trick the changeling into switching itself back. And some of them were okay, and some of them were downright nasty and disgusting and cruel.
Well, it wasn't their baby, so they didn't even care.
Trigger warning at the start. So I'm going to talk about the nicest one first.
Okay.
So the nicest one was to get a sixpence and put your child in a cradle near the fire, because babies don't like fire.
Oh, okay.
And put the sixpence, like you're saying all these layers of weird Scottishness, just you wait.
Oh, yes. Awesome.
Just you wait. Like, no wonder my brain is a jumble. If my ancestors came up with shite.
I cannot wait. I'm literally like on the edge of my seat. What did they do?
So, put the sixpence in a tablespoon with some water and some salt. And you have to dissolve the salt in the water, but you have to stir it with your forefinger.
Okay.
So you dissolve the salt.
I bet you it's in a specific direction too, by the way.
Yeah, probably. And I'm already confused. Stir the salt with your forefinger until the salt dissolves in this tablespoon with the sixpence sitting in it. Then what you have to do is you have to moisten the child's feet and palms of their hands 3 times in a circular direction, whatever direction it is.
Okay.
And give it some of the water with the salt twice.
Okay.
So 3 times hands, 3 times feet,
twice
in
the mouth.
Water, twice in the mouth. Touch the head with the forefinger and say a saying which I can't quite pronounce. And the reason why I can't quite pronounce it is that the woman who said it in the podcast I was listening to was American.
What are you trying to say? I am offended.
Her Scottish was a bit dubious. So
I'm
I'm not quite sure
offended.
what she was trying to say.
On behalf
but
of all Americans.
it was something like God preserve for us south, but I don't quite know what that means. And then you have to, but you say a saying, and then you have to chuck the rest of the water into the fire. And apparently this will help get your baby back.
Whoa.
So the other thing that you can do is you can carry your child to a fairy ring or somewhere where the fairies live. This is a bit that, like from Outlander.
Yeah.
You have to take some offerings. So you have to take some butter or cheese or eggs.
Yeah.
And leave them. And then if they disappear, like the fairies have had a wee feast on your food.
Yeah.
You probably found it hard to get a hold of in the first place. Then apparently you will get your child returned. But there's also stories of people taking the child out and leaving it overnight. And sometimes their child would be missing in the morning and there'd be nothing, which meant that the fairies had taken their own baby back but kept the human baby.
Oh my God.
Sometimes the baby would be dead, which the humans then said it was a changeling. It wasn't our child, it was a changeling. And they were too sickly, they couldn't survive.
Oh my God.
And sometimes the child would be the human baby again and be fine, and they would have had their baby returned. But modern day science would suggest that that was when the babies had jaundice and then the child had a bit of sunlight therapy and got better.
Interesting.
Which I found really interesting.
That is interesting. Although I don't think one day would do it, but that is interesting.
No. Yeah. I think, whatever.
I'm
sure. I'm sure it's all rubbish.
Yeah.
So another one which is even sillier than the whole sixpence salt water thing.
Yeah. I'm riveted. This is amazing. Yes.
Just you wait.
I'm so excited.
This one cracks me up.
Oh God.
Is to trick them by cooking things either in or out of eggshells.
What?
So make like tiny little cakes inside the eggshells.
Is there tiny little baby fairies?
They're like tiny little loaves of bread inside the eggshells. So you'd like empty out the eggshells and use the eggshells.
As like the dishes for the fairies?
As like the little dishes. Because you're confused. I'm sorry for laughing so much. I find this absolutely hilarious. You're confusing the fairy.
Yeah, because they're like, what the?
Yeah, the fairy sits in his crib. The 95-year-old fairy pretending to be a 3-month-old baby sees their mum empty the eggs out and fill it with bread dough and put it in the oven and bake these tiny, tiny little breads. And the fairy goes, what the fuck? And then the mom goes, aha, I knew you were a changeling.
That's it? That's really
you've got a trick, yeah. The baby doesn't say what the fuck. The baby, that was me saying that. The baby would usually say, never in my whole of my life have I ever seen something so strange as that.
The Southern accent.
That was my Scottish. That was me putting on my sort of tutor. Never in my life have I seen anything so strange. That was my fairy. That was my 95-year-old fairy.
I thought you were in like Tennessee for a second. I'm like, did they time warp?
No, I actually did have a bit of a Tennessee accent for a little while.
In real life? When you were traveling? I knew you were going to say that. Oh, I want to talk about accents in another episode because that's another thing.
But isn't that funny?
So bizarre.
Or you make a soup or a stew with crushing eggshells, which is another way of tricking them, because they're like, why would you put the eggshells in the soup? And so it's actually a way of getting them to like exclaim out loud at something. And like, so you're
I am a fairy.
Them. Oh yeah. Isn't that hilarious?
That is the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
I know.
I have no idea.
So they were all the kind of funny, nice ones. But if you want to be really nasty,
there's darker ones. I forgot.
You could chuck the baby in the fire.
What?
Because then they thought, so you would either heat up a poker from the fire,
what?
And put the poker in the baby's pot. You could wave the hot poker as close to the baby as you could. So basically what they were trying to do was, fairies are afraid of fire. Mm-hmm. And by putting this hot poker right next to the baby, people listening don't see that actually I'm doing so many hand movements at the moment on YouTube. It's hilarious. So you would wait.
Wait, what is it? Like this? Is it this way?
It would scare the fairy. The fairy would be, again, what the fuck? The fairy would jump out of the cot, up the chimney, jump up the chimney, and then they would get maybe a knock at the door, and it would be the fairy queen or whatever at the door with the couple's baby saying, you don't treat, if you treat our babies like that, then we don't want your one, and give it back.
And they just give it back.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, you're just threatening. You're just threatening with the poker, so that one's not that bad.
Well, except the other one was like. So I don't know if you know about old-fashioned Scottish fires. I'm sure it's not just Scottish fires. I'm sure fires in Germany were the same.
Oh wait, there's fire in Germany,
but they had these flat griddle pans
for cooking.
So it would have a flat bottom. And then iron on that side with maybe a chain, and it would hang in the fireplace, so they could put them over the fire, and they could cook griddle pancakes or griddle scones or whatever.
Oat cakes,
some mannix.
Right.
And sometimes they would put the baby on that.
What?
It's pretty nasty.
That's awful.
I know. Or
oh God, that like gives
or sometimes just plain up, throw the baby in the fire, which is the worst one.
I just want to know if this worked. I mean, I just feel like if you throw a baby in the fire,
well,
there's all these
worked
stories,
right? So sometimes I guess the baby would die, the changeling would die,
and then they would just be like,
they wouldn't get their baby back, and they'd be saying, "Oh, the fairies are annoyed at us; they're keeping our baby." It was maybe one of those things that there was an excuse for everything.
Literally everything.
Yeah. Our baby, that was actually our baby, or our baby isn't being returned.
So it's really is no matter whatever the outcome is, it doesn't really actually even matter. Because there's reason for everything that happens.
I know. They had an excuse. Because I suppose if you wanted to really analyze it in terms of, is it sociology? That it probably is, even though fairies are real. Don't piss us off, fairies.
Yeah, we love you.
We love you.
Yes.
Don't come for me. My baby's 20. You can't take him. Although I'm sure he's a changeling anyway, actually. In a nice way.
Yes.
In a nice way. But yeah, don't come for us. But if you were going to analyze it in a sociology way, then it is all about childhood illness and explaining that. So explaining the reason and then dealing with it.
Trying to understand what it is, where it came from, and what you can, why it's happening to you.
Yeah.
And it also happened to someone else. It also didn't probably happen super commonly, you know.
Although there are
millions of
changeling stories. I mean, they all follow a very similar pattern.
Yeah.
Somebody notices a change in the baby, whether it's the mother or the father or a neighbor, and then someone says to the mother, oh, your child's become a changeling child, and then they'll say, this is what you need to do to fix it, and it's one of those things, and then they try them either with success or without.
Yeah. I really tonight, I think when I go to bed at night is when I do all my reading, and I am so reading this Changelings and Midwives chapter by Catherine Briggs tonight.
I think there was a lot as well. There was a lot of connection with midwives because there was an awful lot, as you know, an awful lot of distrust in midwives. A lot of women that were accused of being witches were actually midwives. There's an awful lot of hatred and distrust of midwives.
Well, it's because they're the only ones in the room that you can blame anything on, right?
Yeah.
Other than it's not the mother or the baby. Who else is there? Oh, the midwife.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
Yeah.
The father isn't there. That, you know what I mean? Like, so she's the easy... she's the only one there to point the finger at.
I know.
They know everything, right? They know more than someone else. So they have a lot of power, which is probably intimidating. I cannot wait to read more about these.
There's a whole chapter there's a whole chapter in this book as well, which is it this one? Or is it Scottish Fairy? This one's Scottish Fairy Belief. This one's got quite a lot of stuff on changelings as well, which is really interesting.
Oh,
this book?
No, I don't. I've ordered embarrassingly a large number of books lately.
Oh, I know.
It's really bad.
And also, this is another good one. If anyone is interested, it's called The Lore of Scotland.
Who was that one by? Oh, I just ordered that one yesterday. I ordered that one yesterday. Is that by Catherine somebody? Is that by a woman? Jennifer?
Westwood and Kingshill.
Yes. I literally listened to a podcast yesterday. It was excellent. And at the end of the podcast, he said, if you're only going to buy one book on fairy lore, and I literally was like, hold up, let me get my notes app out.
What podcast was that?
It was so good. Actually, I screenshotted. I took a screenshot of the 3 that I listened to yesterday. They were all excellent. And let me see if I can find it really quickly. Where was it? It was really, really good. This one in particular. I guess I didn't screenshot.
We're so professional.
Oh, one was called Malicious Mamas, which I thought was going to be sort of maybe a little like ours, just loose cash and making fun of, but actually she was super a million times more professional than we will ever be. So her name a little bit belied the tone of her podcast. But I'm saying that almost as like a compliment. She did a really good job. This was, I believe it was listed on this, I think it was called, I think he has a regular podcast and then he has a spin-off podcast where he did like a, where is that? He did like a little spin-off. Is this it? Okay, sorry, I'm searching through. I'll let you know because I'm not finding it quickly enough.
Yeah. Okay.
There was 3 I listened to and they were all excellent.
Yeah. Well, that's a good book. I haven't read a lot of it yet. What I'm tending to do is just look up the bits that I need for the particular bits I'm talking about. But there's so much in here. It's going to keep me going for a long time.
Here, this one, the podcast is called Unearthed. It was super good. Super good. Do you have more? I feel like I was not not to be negative, but I wasn't super like intrigued about changing. Like I knew it was a thing, and I personally I didn't have my sights on doing an episode myself. Like I didn't want to read about them. I was happy that you were doing it, because then I could be lazy and not have to. But I wasn't like super burning to learn about them. I learned so many crazy, interesting things.
Yeah. All I had
really
in
crazy.
my head before we started was the whole thing of
just
switching the babies.
But this is like a whole...
And I didn't know all that stuff about eggshells and iron scissors and illnesses. And it was so interesting.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm going to stop speaking about it because we've been going on for ages. But if you are interested, that University of Pittsburgh, I think it was, website had so many stories that all like different. So I didn't speak about any particular story. I just did it in general. But if you want to read particular stories, there is a ton on there, and it's so interesting. So interesting how similar a lot of them are as well, and not just in Scotland. In lots of, obviously there's differences. Apparently some of the traditions about what to do to get rid of a fairy changeling or what to do to ward off a fairy changeling differ from country to country. So it's different in Sweden than it is in Scotland, for example. But there's also a lot of similarities as well. It's just so interesting.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna devour this chapter, and then can talk more about it and learn more about it. It's really interesting. And just like, I appreciated stopping to think about all the ramifications. Like, what does that really mean? What was really going on? Why did they do it? And then it's like, really like, wow. Yeah. And I have such sympathy. They were so ignorant. They had like zero healthcare, like zero. I mean, they
had no way of solving any of these problems.
Nothing. I don't even know why the human race is even here today with just having 3 babies myself. I mean, I would have died no doubt with my first baby. Absolutely.
Oh, me too.
And he was in the NICU. He was severely jaundiced. Like this whole thing, like we would have both died. Like just easily, like no question. And how did they go through all of this totally alone in the middle of the woods? Like, like how is anyone even here today?
I guess a lot of them didn't,
No, I think a lot of them did not.
Mortality rate was really high, and
they're like tossing their babies in the fire.
the women, a lot of the women that died in pregnancy or childbirth, I would have died for sure. In pregnancy.
I'm sure most of us would have. I mean, absolutely. It's really like when you really stop and think about it and put yourself back there.
I know.
It's insane. It's even more insane than just the superficial storytelling of it. But I cannot wait to dive into that. Next week, I'm going to be talking about the Ben Knee, which is what? It's called the Ben Knee. It's or Benia, which is the Scottish version of the Banshee.
Oh, yes. I love a Banshee.
Yeah, but Banshee is only in Ireland. Did you know that? I think a little bit of Scotland, but that's really an Irish thing.
I think that they've become called Banshees here as well. But actually they're not.
They're not the same though. Technically, according to the like fairy lore experts, I think they're separate. They look different. They act different. And so the Benia or the Ben Knee is just in Scotland, and then the Banshee.
I can't wait to hear.
Yeah, it's super, super interesting.
I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like as each week goes on, I'm just loving learning so much about all of these things.
I can't believe how much there is on all of this whole subject. I just think that we're like at the tip of an iceberg.
Maybe by the time we've done 150 episodes, we'll be super experts and we can write
I know.
postgraduate dissertations on the folklore of Scotland.
Well, and you know what else I've kind of come to realize too is that like seeing Catherine Briggs' Bible of a book be out of print since the 70s makes me so sad.
Yeah.
Because it means that that is showing that there's a disinterest in the topic. And I only asked for two books for my birthday was all that I asked for this year. And both of them were out of print, no longer available. And they both were on fairy Celtic art and sketching and drawings by like masters. And I'm like, this is almost like I've been finding like a deeper reason to have a podcast other than just like drinking and hanging out with my best friend. But it's also to like, maybe we could actually help keep some of these stories going for longer and bring them
so
to
important.
More people. Well, they are. They really are.
And they're so fascinating. And I think it's such a part of our history as well that a lot of people have just completely forgotten about. And I think a lot of them, even though people would maybe chuckle or dismiss them or just think they're stupid, actually a lot of them connects us with nature and our surroundings in a way that is disconnected nowadays.
Absolutely. It also just helps. I find it helps me to like slow down a hot minute. Like everything in this world is like, I mean, in my life especially, it's like go, 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 go. You know, there's like 50,000 things and social media and like blah, 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 blah. And like when I sit and I learn about it, you're really talking about like a time when like life was still and the human imagination was going insane. And like, what are these stories? And it's so freaking fascinating. Like, this is what humans were like living and talking about and breathing about at one point. And like, I just feel like it's such important to like nod for a minute and acknowledge like, this was their life. And like, holy crap, this is what they are like thinking about and doing. And it makes me like get out of my own like life obsession, like me, I'm doing all this crazy. And like think about someone else and think about a different time and a different land. And it helps like put what I'm going through in perspective of like, all right, chill out. Like, yeah, you can go to Target later. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like,
oh God, I was thinking exactly the same thing the other day when I was in my kitchen and I think I was just getting something out of the fridge and cooking it. And I was thinking, how lucky am I?
Yeah.
How lucky am I that first of all, I can basically just go to the supermarket and pick whatever I want off the shelves. Mm-hmm. Even when there was the mad pasta shortage of 2020 and the mad toilet paper debacle of 2020. Yep. Come on, people were going crazy because they couldn't get pasta and pasta sauce. Like, there's rice there. Like, it's really
that's funny.
Hard.
That's funny that you say that because when everyone was freaking out about the toilet paper, so I spent 3 months in Africa and there was no toilet paper. And I just remember being like, I could think of 20 things that I could substitute for toilet paper in my house right now. I wouldn't even have to go to the store to buy it. Yeah. Like, come on, people. You can use napkins. You can use tissues. You can use paper. You can use paper. Like, you're not going to die if you don't have the perfect roll of toilet paper.
Spoiled in a way, and so
we're just not adapting. Like we forget how to like use things in our environment.
So easy. Life is so easy in a way for us compared to the way that they lived in the 1500s, 1700s, even the early 1900s. I would say even up until maybe the 1960s. Life is so it's so different for us,
so
and people are
even from our generation to our kids' pasta. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Well, even compared to the 90s.
Oh, for sure.
I was in college.
Absolutely. We didn't have smartphones and all this stuff. It really is cool. And honestly too, I feel like we can use the advantages of what we have in 2020 or this part of this century to magnify the stories and like to bring them. And it's fun to talk about them in a fun way. It doesn't have to be like dry and educational and like boring. It can be like hanging out and chattering about it like we would chattering about something else. And actually that segues really quickly. I know we've been chattering for 100 years, but what I found so funny is that how you were laughing. I have such like 80s hair right now. I can't even.
How you notice I had a tartan headband?
I know, you're so cute. I did notice. And by the way, I had a Zoom call earlier and everyone in the Zoom call had braids and you have braids and now I'm like feeling, where are my braids? This is so cute. I did not get the braids memo and it makes me sad, but I was laughing. The reason I picked the Ben Nia is because the one thing that I wrote about it was so freaking hilarious. And what I thought was interesting is that even though these other podcasts that I listen to, when they get to this part that's like, oh my God, no one was laughing about it. No one was even chuckling about it. And I'm like, what is wrong with you people? Even though they're more professional, smarter, like better produced than our podcast will ever be in 100 years. I still was like, guys, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. Why is no one talking about this? This is ridiculous.
No, the eggy bread, the eggshell bread.
We need to talk about that part. Like we need to take a minute and laugh our asses off because that is funny schnitzel right there. So that's like, I feel like that can be our contribution. Is like, no, we need to really talk about what these stories are. It's okay to laugh at them too. Oh yeah, you wait. I
can't wait. I cannot wait.
It's crazy town. You're gonna die. I might have to do a drawing to accompany it because I have to like put the visual maybe on paper.
Well, if I do die, I just don't want like a wailing banshee standing next to me.
Oh, you don't. Well, you would die after the wailing banshee. So if she's already wailing, then just run.
Is there not a banshee? Oh, we can't start talking about banshees. We'll be here for another 3 hours.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. Share the podcast with all of your friends, all your kooky weirdo friends that love folklore and fairy lore like we do. We would super appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and we will be back next week with talking about the Banshee of Scotland's version.
Yeah. And you can find us on Instagram. And
oh my God. And holy cow, I almost forgot. I almost forgot our journals.
We have some really gorgeous journals.
If you're watching this on YouTube, you have to check this out because I'm obsessed. Yeah, so actually this is this journal called Whisper of Elves, I'm obsessed with. That has the most beautiful, gorgeous photographs inside. You can only see this if you're on YouTube, but you can actually go to onescotone.com and see the journals there. Or Amazon, anywhere. But this is the one that I was designing when I was in the haunted hotel and my son was dead asleep and I was trying to like stay awake but distract myself completely because I was like terrified. This is what I made that night in bed, like freaked.
Yeah. So if you want some cool blank journals to write in, you'll find them either on our website. We'll take you to Amazon, or you could just go straight to Amazon, search up my name or Karen's name.
Oh my God.
And you'll find them.
Yeah. If you search Karen Campbell books, I have about 24 books out. I think I have so many, but the photographs in our blank journals are beautiful and they're not all blank. There's things on every single page to help inspire you. And like, I'm obsessed with these big square journals. The photographs.
I think they're great. I can't wait. I want to get some as well. I'm gonna have to order some for myself.
This one though, hands down, is my favorite. Like I can't get over her. She's so amazingly beautiful. Whisper of Elves and Realm of the Fairy Queen is my other favorite square one.
The wee fairy journal, which loads of people have ripped off.
Oh my God. Yeah, we might have to talk about that for a hot second.
Yeah,
I'm gonna show it actually if you're watching on YouTube.
Yeah, so somebody we've got our wee forest baby journal, I
created this one, which if you're watching on YouTube, it has a single fern curling frond on the front cover,
and we published it like mid-February, I think, and then all of a sudden
there's like 14 copies.
March, there's like a whole bunch of copies from not us. with other photographs, but they've all called their journals the Forest Fairy Journal, like ours, so that it comes up.
No, they copy and pasted the title and the subtitle.
And I
like
know.
it like literally copy and pasted. I was devastated. So ours is the only one that has 5-star reviews, and it's literally one of a kind. And we have photographs throughout, which are super
and Karen's
sweet
notes, but you don't get those.
You won't have a used copy like mine. But none of the other ones have photos in them, and they blatantly ripped me off, and I'm pissed off about it. So if you want the original one that supports this podcast and the work that Lucy and I are doing,
because the money that we get from selling those helps pay for
it just goes to
our
the
website
podcast.
and our podcast hosting and stuff like that. So that luckily is great and super appreciated.
Yeah, and someday we might have a real producer and not use my 14-year-old son, in which case we'll actually need actual money to pay an actual human.
We have a real producer that we would actually get like the silly little rubbish bits in the middle, like
when I'm screaming for my kids.
And me blowing my nose.
My mic was muted, thank you. So only YouTube has to listen to that. But the podcast members, thankfully, will be spared. But anyways, it definitely does help us. Scoot? Yeah, we're going to scoot. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. And we'll see you guys next week.
Okay, bye.
Bye. And I just realized